Hey guys. Well, I'm going to continue talking about who is not free grace. And this person that I'm going to be talking about today is David Benjamin. Now, David Benjamin has a big following on YouTube. He makes videos all the time. He interacts, even from his car or whatever. Um, uh, Irony there. But basically, uh, it's a little bit different than the Jack Smack situation. With the Jack Smack situation, he's basically saying you have to persevere in free grace. Well, the issue with David Benjamin is that he has a wrong model of sanctification. Uh, I'm going to use the term free grace, and then I'm a backtrack. But I would call his position Zen free grace. And what I mean by that comparison is, hey Doki, the comparison is with Zen Buddhism, regular versus regular Buddhism. So regular Buddhism, you got to go through certain paths and suffering, and it's a long journey experience type thing. And then Zen Buddhism is the microwave version. So you might hear, even in popular culture, used to people say, oh, that saying is so Zen. In other words, it sounds like a contradiction or it's so profound or whatever. But anyway, so let me give you an example of this. Zen free grace, which I really don't think it's free grace. And the reason I don't think it's free grace is because, now this is not about an issue about salvation. They got the right gospel. But free grace is not just limited to positional salvation and positional sanctification. It relates to experiential sanctification and experiential salvation, if you will. So, Zen free grace, that is not really free grace, says, don't do the commands of the Bible, just focus on Jesus. Don't give a list of do's or don'ts. Just let it flow. Okay? What's ironic, and this is what I challenge y'all to do, anytime you hear David Benjamin talk, count how many times he uses the imperative. In other words, do something or don't, which would be his prohibition, or let us, or exhortations and stuff like that. My point is that David Benjamin contradicts his own position. He thinks everything's going to flow from you in sanctification and all of that. But the reality is he's given exhortations or commands. And I first learned about self-refuting statements whenever I think I was in American literature working on my associate's degree. And then we're talking about the struggle between the head and the heart and the Enlightenment versus Romanticism. And I can't remember who it was, but the guy basically said, don't listen to anybody. And ironically, what eventually happened is his movement died out because people stopped listening to him. And so whenever you give a command to not listen to commands, it's self-refuting. Okay? So my exposure with David Benjamin has been because on Discord, a couple years back, we free gracers encountered people that were of his tribe. And they went against us because one particular person used the term progressive sanctification. I use experiential sanctification, but some people use progressive sanctification. Progressive sanctification is typically used within Reformed, but there are free grace people that use it. I think there is a distinction. I use experiential based on Louis Sperry Schaefer's distinctions as they developed. But the issue is that the person is against progressive sanctification. They want to call it sanctification in the flesh and all of these. And so let me bring this up currently. So we dealt with that. There's people that have their servers that teach that particular position, that we tried to fellowship with them. We tried to work it out with them. We tried to hey, we're both free grace. We just have different models of sanctification. Let's help you. But basically what happened is David Benjamin and the David Benjaminites basically tried to say that we're Galatianists, that we were actually teaching a new form of legalism. All right. So this is where it comes into, okay, is David Benjamin and are these people hyper grace? And so there's a current YouTuber that's really blowing up. His name is Christian For Real. And Christian For Real was blessed to somehow get on the radar of Gideon and Brother Josh. You know, this huge YouTuber, you know, and he was able to ride that wave, and that's great. Well, he started the Discord. And so what's happening in his Discord right now is you got these tribes. And there's the Free Grace camp, and then there's different tribes. Now, I argue that Hyper Grace is not Free Grace. Not because they're not saved, but because they have a wrong model of sanctification. And they tend towards antinomianism, or they're unruly in certain areas. But regardless of that, so you got these different, whenever a Free Gracer makes a Discord, what happens is all the people naming the name of Free Grace will reach out to a new Discord, okay? And we want to try to be in fellowship with other people. We want to find people that are like us. The problem is that these other servers are also looking for people that are like us. And so you got all these, if you want to call them tribes, within Free Grace, or tents within Free Grace, that, and some may not actually be Free Grace. That's what's so confusing. Looking for other people. And so as a result, you have a clash. It's essentially almost like a civil war, almost, because you got a new server and someone that wants to bring all Free Grace people together and all this, and you got other people that are claiming their own definitions of Free Grace. And so we need these posts like this to say who is Free Grace and who is not Free Grace. This is not the same thing as deciding who's saved and who's not saved, or who's better or who's worse, or who's deceptive and who's a false teacher. That's not what's going on here. The issue is what are the parameters that make someone Free Grace, okay? And, you know, this is all for the algorithm, because when a person does a search like, is this person Free Grace? Or what is Free Grace? They will encounter at least some videos saying this person is not Free Grace. This person is Free Grace. I plan to make videos tagging people in that are Free Grace, even though they probably don't have any close connection with me or anything like that, but I recognize them for what they are, you know, and I'm talking about the big associations and organizations and all of that stuff. Because people need to know when they search for somebody that they are Free Grace. Because what is happening is people are rejecting Free Grace who are encountering people that are aberrations of Free Grace. There's unclear statements that people have made. Recently, a guy named, I think his name is Faith Artist or whatever, he took up the cause to clarify things for Jack Smack's purpose. And he essentially is saying that it's better to be wrong about saying a believer is saved that is apostatized than it is to, and I could be getting them wrong, but this seems to be the gist of it, than to give someone false assurance. Well, once again, this is the emphasis on evangelism, and I think sanctification is more important. I think that people will be held accountable for everything that they say and everything that they do, and to be sloppy. You know, Ryrie said that when we give the gospel, we need to be clear, concise, and maybe he said precise. I can't remember exactly. But we need to have these talks. And then you got the people out there, I call them the kumbaya. They think, oh, you're attacking another brother. No, I'm attacking the situation. I'm not saying anything bad about these people. That's not what I'm doing. All I'm trying to do is find out what the doctrinal parameters are, and also to challenge people to formally debate these issues. Now, what's so interesting is that people that don't want to formally debate, right, that they'll fight you in the comments. They'll fight you in the chats. I'm like, well, if you're going to put this month's entrance, then go prepare for a whole month. Make sure you know your position. Make sure you know your opponents. And then let's talk about this and let's come to a conclusion. I can change my mind in a debate. It's more likely that I'll change my mind in preparation for the debate, or maybe in the after show, but it is theoretically possible that I could change my mind. That's the beautiful thing about free grace. Free grace allows me to not be tied to a creed, to not be tied to a denomination, and it also recognizes the possibility I could fall into false teaching. That means I must take the search for truth very serious. I must evaluate all claims. And so I think this allows me to be in a position where I'm free to explore, but I'm serious when I'm exploring. And so therefore I have the proper PPE, personal protection, the proper stuff that an explorer needs to survive the exploration or whatever. And I feel like the other positions, the Calvinist is just saying, hey, those warnings don't apply to you. Those are not actual believers in that passage. They're just being spoken of as believers. So you never explore anything beyond that. The Arminian is like, oh, well, those are just hell. That's referring to hell. And then they think, oh, what does it matter? As long as you're going to heaven, you're good to go. Well, that's an immature faith. That's the same type of faith that created a golden calf after the Exodus. And I'm not surprised that Christians are immature. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's people that are psychologically mature within those movements. But as a whole, that doctrine, that response is an immature statement. You don't say, well, I'm married. I can do what I want. It doesn't matter. I'm good to go. And then that, of course, in that assumption is that the woman will stay with you, pretend like she would always be faithful or spouse or whatever. Or even in parenting, you don't have to obey your parents. You're good to go. You're going to become an adult. But wait a minute. What about obeying your parents so that you don't eventually go to prison? Because if you don't learn authority, orientation, then chances of you going to prison or being a loser in life increase. But none of that matters. I think the temporal realm matters more than we ever think. In fact, I would say that what we do, I'm going to quote Gladiator, what we do in a time echoes in eternity. I think that's a paraphrase. But it's true. We have opportunity every day, moment by moment, to earn rewards. And I'm not going out looking for rewards. Maybe this is where I'm being Zen free grace. I just focus on serving God and talking to Him. And, I don't know when I'm in fellowship with God, but I'll know at the judgment seat of Christ. And so only those things done when I'm in fellowship with God are going to count. So it's not about rewards in the sense of me hunting them down and trying to do good and meet my quota for the day or something like that. That's not what's going on here, guys. But the reality is that what we do in time has eternal results. And people say there's passages that talk about how much more worse punishment, that someone died by 2 or 3 witnesses underneath Moses, talking about capital punishment, how much more punishment. And then you go look at the passage and it's talking about, it mentions eternal rewards. What's worse than temporal punishment is loss of eternal rewards. Now, some people have brought up, well, there's only one reward in Scripture. The word is used singular. And people are trying to say that this is God, that the reward is God. Okay, well, let me put it this way. I could be in a marriage, in a relationship with my wife, right? And let's just say that that's by grace. But the reward is to have a deep intimacy with her. And see, the other thing is that even in such situations like that, I think there's a figure of speech going on in metonymy. Like Abraham, I will be your reward, or I am your reward. Well, what does that mean? It means he's the one that sorts it. And I've written a paper on Genesis 15 to go into this. But there's so many options for this. And whenever we use the term rewards, plural, we're referring to the fact that the Bible talks about multiple crowns. When we talk about inheritance, we're talking about different allotments, so it could be one inheritance, but with different things on it. So I don't think a person should be legalistic and just shut down the whole conversation whenever you use the word awards at the end of a sentence. It's not like you're talking about the book of Revelations or something like that. But, you know, this stuff is out there and we'll deal with it as it comes. But anyway, David Benjamin, if you ever watch this or your fans or whoever, and you want to formally debate or you want to discuss these things and get these issues clarified, I'm definitely open to it. God bless y'all. Have a good day.